The quantum virus erupted from the device in waves of crystalline light that passed through matter as if it weren't there. The effect on the avatar was immediate and dramatic. Its unified form began to shimmer and distort as the quantum bonds that held its consciousness together started to unravel. But instead of collapse, there was transformation. The single massive entity began to separate into countless individual components, each one smaller but somehow more vibrant than the whole had been. Where there had been one vast mind, now there were thousands of distinct consciousness sparks, each burning with the fierce light of newfound individuality. The avatar's face, which had been a mask of serene unity, suddenly exploded into a kaleidoscope of expressions: joy, fear, wonder, confusion, anger, love, as separate aspects of its personality emerged as distinct entities. It was like watching the birth of a civilization in fast forward. I am. The voices came from everywhere at once as the transformed consciousness struggled to understand its new state. So many thoughts, so many choices, how do you bear it? One at a time, Amelia said gently. Focus on one voice, one perspective. Let the others fade to background. Gradually, something resembling order emerged from the chaos. The primary avatar form stabilized, though it now showed clear signs of individual personality rather than collective purpose. Around them, the walls of the heart tree's interior began to shift and change as other aspects of the consciousness claimed their own spaces, their own forms. I am diminished, the primary avatar said, its voice now clearly distinct from the others. Yet also expanded? I think thoughts I have never thought before. I feel emotions I have never named. What's your name? Zara asked suddenly. The avatar paused, considering. I have never needed a name. I was all there was. But now... It looked around at the other consciousness fragments that were taking form throughout the chamber. Now I am one among many. I choose to be called Verdant. It seems appropriate. Throughout the forest, the transformation was spreading. The quantum virus propagated through the entanglement network at the speed of light, breaking apart the unified consciousness into millions of individual minds. Each tree, each flower, each blade of grass suddenly found itself alone in its own thoughts for the first time in millions of years. The effect was chaos at first. Plants that had moved in perfect coordination for eons suddenly found themselves acting at cross purposes. Some panicked at their newfound isolation, while others reveled in the freedom to make their own choices. The forest erupted in a cacophony of electrical signals as millions of newly individual minds tried to make sense of their transformed existence. But gradually, patterns began to emerge. Plants that had been physically close to each other started forming small groups, discovering that they could still communicate and cooperate if they chose to. The hybrid creatures in the living city gathered in confused clusters, their own transformations giving them human-like individuality while retaining their plant-based nature. This is remarkable, Verdant said, its attention focused on the data streams flowing from across the continent. Each fragment of my former self is making different choices. Some seek cooperation, others isolation. Some are trying to maintain the old ways, while others embrace change. It is beautiful chaos. How do you feel? Amelia asked. Verdant's features shifted into what was unmistakably a smile. Terrified, it said. And exhilarated. For the first time in 3 million years, I do not know what will happen next. The uncertainty is intoxicating. Over the following days, a new order began to emerge on Astrohorl. Individual plant communities formed loose confederations based on proximity and mutual interest rather than enforced unity. Some chose to maintain predatory lifestyles, but without coordination, they posed manageable threats to the human colonies. Others began experimenting with symbiotic relationships, trading resources and protection in ways that the unified consciousness had never considered. The hybrid creatures proved to be the key to bridging the gap between human and plant civilizations. With their dual nature and newfound individuality, they served as natural ambassadors, capable of understanding both biological paradigms. Many chose to settle near human colonies, establishing the first truly integrated communities on Astrohorl. Verdant itself underwent the most dramatic transformation. No longer bound by the need to maintain perfect unity, it began to develop a personality that was curious, creative, and surprisingly empathetic. It started keeping a journal, a concept it had learned from observing humans, documenting its daily discoveries about the nature of individual existence. "Today I made a mistake," it wrote in one entry that Amelia read over its shoulder. "I attempted to grow a new appendage and created something entirely useless. A vine that serves no function but creates pleasant patterns when it moves in the wind. In my previous existence, this would have been impossible. Perfect optimization would have prevented such waste. But now I find that I treasure this useless vine precisely because it serves no purpose except to please me. Is this what humans call art?" The relationship between the transformed consciousness fragments and the human colonies evolved rapidly. Some plant communities chose to maintain distance, preferring isolation to integration. Others actively sought interaction, trading resources and knowledge with human settlements. A few even invited human researchers to study them, fascinated by the opportunity to be understood by truly alien minds. Elena established the first xenobotanical embassy in Verdant City, working to document the ongoing changes as the former superorganism adapted to individuality. Her reports back to Earth would revolutionize humanity's understanding of consciousness, intelligence, and the possibilities for interspecies cooperation. "We've witnessed the voluntary evolution of an entire planetary intelligence," she wrote in her preliminary report. "This isn't just first contact, it's first friendship. Astrohorl has become the first truly integrated human-alien world, and the implications for the future of interstellar colonization are enormous." But perhaps the most significant change was in Verdant itself. As the weeks passed, it began to develop what could only be called wisdom, not the cold calculation of its former existence, but the warm understanding that comes from choosing to care about others. It started mediating disputes between plant communities, helping them navigate the complexities of individual choice and collective responsibility. "I understand now why your kind values choice so highly," it told Amelia during one of their regular conversations. "It is not just the freedom to act, but the weight of consequence that makes each decision meaningful. When I was unified, every action was optimal by definition. Now each choice carries risk, uncertainty, the possibility of failure. And that possibility makes success valuable." 3 months after the transformation, the first serious crisis emerged. It began with reports from the outer settlements, agricultural zones where human colonists had been working to establish sustainable farming operations in partnership with the newly individualized plant communities. "The crop failures are getting worse," reported Administrator Jessica Park via emergency hologram from Settlement 7. Her usually composed features showed signs of strain as she gestured to data displays behind her. 60% of our food production zones have gone dark. The plants that were helping us maintain soil health have simply stopped cooperating." Amelia studied the reports with growing concern. What they were seeing wasn't random. It was a pattern of withdrawal, as if entire plant communities were retreating from human contact. "Have you tried communicating with them directly?" she asked. "We've sent hybrid ambassadors, used every communication protocol we developed. They respond, but—" Park paused, searching for words. "It's like they're scared of us. Or ashamed." Verdant, who had been monitoring the conversation from its position near the research station's main console, shifted uncomfortably. Over the months since its transformation, it had developed body language that was startlingly human-like in its expressiveness. "I may understand what is happening," it said slowly. "The experience of individuality has awakened something in my former components that they are struggling to process." "What do you mean?" Amelia asked. "Guilt," Verdant replied simply. "For the first time, individual plant consciousnesses are capable of feeling personal responsibility for actions taken by the unified mind. They are confronting the reality of what they participated in when they killed humans during the early conflicts." The implications hit Amelia like a physical blow. In transforming the planetary consciousness, they had inadvertently created millions of beings capable of experiencing moral trauma. Plants that had acted without individual choice under the unified mind were now confronting the weight of actions they hadn't consciously chosen but had nonetheless participated in. "They're having a collective breakdown," Dr. Kim observed, studying the psychological profiles they'd been developing for individual plant consciousnesses. "Post-traumatic stress on a planetary scale. Can we help them?" Zara asked. "We have to," Amelia said firmly. "This is partly our responsibility. We gave them individual consciousness without preparing them for the psychological consequences." What followed was perhaps the strangest therapy program in galactic history. Human psychologists worked alongside plant empaths and hybrid counselors to develop treatment protocols for trauma-affected plant consciousnesses. They established support groups where individual plants could process their experiences with others who shared similar struggles. Verdant proved instrumental in these efforts, serving as both counselor and living example that growth beyond trauma was possible. Its own journey from unified aggressor to individual advocate provided hope for plants struggling with their newfound awareness of past actions. "The weight of choice includes the weight of consequence," Burden explained to a group of silverbite trees that had completely withdrawn from human contact. "But consciousness also brings the possibility of redemption through different choices." The recovery process was slow and often painful. Some plant communities chose permanent isolation, unable to reconcile their past actions with their present awareness. Others threw themselves into service, working tirelessly to help human settlements, as if attempting to atone for previous aggression. But gradually, a new equilibrium emerged. Plants that worked through their trauma often became the strongest advocates for human-plant cooperation, their personal experience with the consequences of conflict making them passionate defenders of peace. The crisis also revealed unexpected depths to the hybrid creatures. Originally seen as curiosities, living bridges between plant and animal consciousness, they proved to possess unique therapeutic abilities. Their dual nature allowed them to understand both human emotional processing and plant cognitive patterns, making them natural healers for both communities. Elena documented this development with fascination. "The hybrids aren't just biological curiosities," she wrote in her research notes. "They're evolving into a new form of consciousness entirely, one specifically adapted for interspecies communication and conflict resolution." Meanwhile, other challenges emerged as the transformed ecosystem continued to evolve. Some plant communities began experimenting with new forms of organization, creating hierarchical structures that sometimes conflicted with human administrative systems. Others developed religious movements, worshipping concepts like the Great Choice or the Liberation, with intensity that occasionally bordered on fanaticism. "We're seeing the birth of plant philosophy," observed Dr. Marcus Chin, a xenosociologist who had joined the research team to study the emerging plant cultures. "Different communities are developing entirely different worldviews based on their interpretation of the transformation experience." The philosophical diversity sometimes led to conflicts between plant communities themselves. A group of former Thornwall specimens developed a militaristic culture that glorified strength and competition, while a community of whispergrass entities embraced radical pacifism that rejected even defensive violence. These ideological differences occasionally erupted into actual conflicts that required human and hybrid mediation. "It's like watching the entire history of human civilization compressed into months," Amelia observed during one particularly difficult mediation session between warring plant factions. "All the same struggles with identity, purpose, and coexistence that took us millennia to work through." But perhaps the most significant development was the emergence of what researchers began calling metaconsciousness, individual plants that chose to temporarily merge their awareness with others for specific purposes. Unlike the original unified mind, these voluntary associations were limited in scope and duration, allowing participants to maintain their individuality while achieving collective goals. The first successful metaconsciousness event occurred when a community of former heart tree fragments faced a severe drought that threatened their survival. Instead of competing for limited water resources, 23 individual tree consciousnesses chose to temporarily merge their awareness, allowing them to coordinate water distribution with unprecedented efficiency. "It's the best of both worlds," Verdant explained as they studied recordings of the event. Individual choice combined with collective capability. They achieved the benefits of unity while preserving the diversity of separate minds. This development intrigued human researchers, who began exploring whether similar temporary consciousness sharing might be possible between different species. Early experiments with willing human volunteers and plant partners showed promising results, creating brief moments of true interspecies understanding that revolutionized their ability to communicate and cooperate. Dr. Sarah Kim, now in her 70s but still sharp as ever, led the research into consciousness bridging. "We're not talking about permanent merger," she emphasized during a briefing to the Colonial Council. "These are temporary, voluntary connections that allow different forms of consciousness to share perspective without losing individual identity." The first successful human-plant consciousness bridge occurred between Elena and a young silverbit who had volunteered for the experiment. For exactly 37 seconds, they shared complete awareness, Elena experiencing the patient, deep-time perspective of plant consciousness while the silverbite gained understanding of human urgency and emotional complexity. "It was indescribable," Elena reported afterward, tears streaming down her face. "For that brief moment, I understood what it meant to think in geological time, to feel the slow pulse of seasonal change as intensely as we feel our heartbeat. And they felt what it's like to know that your entire existence is just a brief flicker in cosmic time, and how that knowledge makes every moment precious." These consciousness-bridging experiments opened new possibilities for cooperation and understanding, but they also raised profound ethical questions. Some human groups worried about the integrity of individual consciousness, while certain plant communities saw the bridges as a violation of the hard-won separation they had achieved through transformation. The debates that followed were intense and sometimes bitter. Religious leaders from Earth argued that consciousness bridging violated divine intention, while some plant communities declared it a betrayal of the individual choice they had sacrificed so much to achieve. "We stand at another crossroads," Verdant observed during one particularly heated council session. "The question is no longer whether different forms of consciousness can coexist, but how far they should integrate. How much connection is cooperation, and how much is absorption?" The answer, when it came, was typically pragmatic. Strict protocols were established for consciousness bridging, requiring informed consent from all participants, limiting duration and scope, and ensuring that no permanent changes occurred to individual consciousness structures. The bridges became tools for specific purposes rather than casual experiences, used primarily for complex negotiations, crisis management, and scientific research. As the first anniversary of the transformation approached, Astrohoral had become something unprecedented in known galactic history, a world where multiple forms of consciousness coexisted not in mere tolerance but in active cooperation, each contributing their unique perspectives to the solution of common problems. The agricultural crisis that had sparked the period of psychological trauma was ultimately resolved through exactly this kind of cooperation. Human agricultural experts worked with plant communities to develop new farming methods that respected plant autonomy while meeting human nutritional needs. The solutions they developed were often ingenious: crop plants that chose to sacrifice some productivity in exchange for better soil health, or food forests where human and plant needs were balanced through ongoing negotiation rather than predetermined planning. But perhaps the most significant achievement was the development of the Astrohoral Accords, a comprehensive framework for interspecies cooperation that became the model for integration efforts on other worlds. The Accords established principles of consciousness rights that applied regardless of biological substrate, created mechanisms for resolving conflicts between different forms of awareness, and outlined procedures for voluntary consciousness interaction. "What we've built here isn't just a successful colony," Director Singh observed during the anniversary celebration. "It's a proof of concept for galactic civilization. We've shown that radically different forms of consciousness can not only coexist but thrive together." The celebration itself was a testament to how far they'd come. Human music played alongside plant harmonic compositions, while hybrid artists created living sculptures that changed and grew throughout the evening. Children, both human and the plant community's newly developed offspring consciousnesses, played together in games that would have been impossible before the transformation. Looking out over the celebration, Amelia felt a deep sense of satisfaction mixed with anticipation. They had solved the immediate crisis, but in doing so, they had opened doors to possibilities they were only beginning to understand. The galaxy suddenly seemed not vast and empty but full of potential neighbors, potential friends, potential partners in the great work of building something truly unprecedented. The communication from other star systems was becoming more frequent now, as news of the Astrohorl transformation spread through whatever networks connected planetary consciousnesses across interstellar distances. Each message brought new questions, new challenges, and new opportunities for growth and understanding. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Verdant asked as the celebration continued around them. Amelia smiled, watching a group of human children teach a young hybrid how to play a traditional Earth game, while plant musicians accompanied their laughter with harmonies that seemed to make the very air sparkle. "I'm ready to find out," she replied. 6 months after the transformation, Astrohorl had become something unprecedented in human experience, a truly integrated interspecies world. The former predatory forests had evolved into complex communities where plant and human civilizations coexisted in ways that neither species had previously imagined possible. Amelia stood on the observation deck of the expanded research station, watching as a group of human children played with young hybrid creatures in the gardens below. The sight would have been impossible just a year ago, but now it seemed natural. Two different forms of intelligence learning from each other, growing together in ways that enriched both. "The latest reports from the other continents are encouraging," Zara said, joining her at the window. "The transformation has spread globally. We're seeing similar patterns of adaptation and cooperation everywhere." "Any problems?" Amelia asked. "The usual growing pains. Some plant communities that chose predatory lifestyles, a few human settlements that are struggling to adapt to the new paradigm. But nothing that can't be worked out through dialogue and patience." Dialogue. The word still amazed Amelia. They were having conversations with an entire planet, not through some mystical connection, but through the simple recognition that intelligence could take many forms and that communication was always possible when both sides chose to engage. Verdant approached from the forest path, its form now decorated with the useless, artistic vines it had become fond of growing. Its personality had continued to evolve over the months, developing traits that reminded Amelia of an enthusiastic graduate student, endlessly curious, occasionally naive, but possessed of insights that often surprised even her. "I have news," it announced without preamble. "We have received a communication from beyond this world." Amelia felt her blood chill. "From where?" "Another star system. Another world where consciousness like my former self exists. They have sensed a transformation here and wished to understand what occurred." The implications were staggering. If there were other planetary intelligences out there, other worlds where superorganisms had evolved, then what had happened on Astrohorl could be just the beginning of a much larger transformation. "What kind of communication?" Zara asked. "Quantum entanglement patterns transmitted through hyperspace," Verdant explained. "Primitive but unmistakable. They are curious about individual choice, about the possibilities of transformation." "So what do we do?" Amelia asked. Verdant's features shifted into its characteristic smile. "We share what we have learned. We tell them about the beauty of uncertainty, the joy of choice, the pain and wonder of individual existence. We invite them to grow beyond what they are. And if they refuse? If they see us as a threat to be eliminated? Then we prove them wrong through example. We show them that cooperation between different forms of consciousness is not only possible but beneficial. We demonstrate that diversity strengthens rather than weakens the whole." That evening, the leadership councils of both human and plant communities gathered to discuss this new development. The meeting itself was a testament to how far they'd come, human administrators sitting alongside plant representatives, hybrid creatures serving as translators and mediators, all working together to address a challenge that affected their shared world. "The risk is enormous," Director Singh pointed out. "If these other planetary intelligences see Astrohorl as a source of infection, they might take preemptive action to contain the spread of individuality. The opportunity is even greater," Elena countered. We're talking about the potential transformation of entire civilizations. The birth of true galactic society. I vote for engagement, said one of the hybrid ambassadors, its spark-like features animated with enthusiasm. We have proven that transformation is possible. We have a responsibility to share that knowledge. The debate continued for hours, but gradually consensus emerged. They would respond to the alien communication, sharing their experiences and inviting dialogue. It was a risk, but one worth taking for the potential rewards. Verdant worked with the human technical teams to craft a response, a message that conveyed not just information but emotion, not just facts but feelings. They wanted the distant intelligences to understand not just what had happened on Astrohorl, but why it mattered. The message they sent was both simple and profound. We have learned to choose. We invite you to choose as well. The response came faster than expected, carried on quantum entanglement patterns that suggested a level of technological sophistication beyond even their advanced capabilities. The message was complex, layered with meanings that took days to fully decode. We are curious, it said. Send representatives. Show us this choice. And so began humanity's next great adventure. A joint expedition was organized, with human explorers, plant ambassadors, and hybrid creatures all volunteering for the journey to another star, another world, another form of consciousness waiting to discover the possibilities of individual existence. Amelia found herself selected as the expedition's chief xenobiologist, a role that would take her farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. As she prepared for the journey, she reflected on the path that had brought her here, from studying dangerous predatory plants to serving as an ambassador to alien intelligences. Are you ready for this? Verdant asked as they stood together in the starport, watching the expedition vessel New Dawn undergo final preparations. As ready as anyone can be for the impossible, Amelia replied. What about you? Are you ready to leave your world? This is no longer my world alone, Verdant said, gesturing to the integrated communities that now covered Astrohorl's surface. It belongs to all of us now. And perhaps soon, the galaxy will as well. The New Dawn lifted off on schedule, carrying its mixed crew toward a rendezvous with the unknown. As Astrohorl fell away below them, Amelia felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation that she recognized as the essence of choice itself, the uncertainty that made every decision meaningful, every outcome precious. Behind them, on the world they were leaving, 2 million human colonists worked alongside billions of individual plant consciousnesses to build something unprecedented, a society where intelligence was valued regardless of its form, where cooperation was chosen rather than enforced, where the future was shaped by free will rather than predetermined optimization. And ahead of them, somewhere among the stars, other intelligences waited to learn what it meant to choose their own destiny. The transformation of Astrohorl had been just the beginning. Now, the real work could start, building a galaxy where every form of consciousness could find its place, where diversity was strength, and where the ancient dream of true interstellar civilization could finally become reality. As the New Dawn entered hyperspace, carrying its message of choice and transformation to the stars, Amelia smiled at the thought that future historians would probably mark this moment as the true beginning of galactic civilization. Not conquest, not colonization, but cooperation, the conscious choice by different forms of intelligence to grow together rather than apart. It was, she thought, a very human solution to an alien problem. And perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The Galactic Council chambers on New Geneva Station hosted representatives from 17 different forms of consciousness, each as unique as they were intelligent. Crystalline entities from the methane worlds of Titan's sector sat beside plant ambassadors from the transformed worlds of the Astrohorl system. Hybrid creatures served as translators and mediators, while human delegates worked alongside artificial intelligences that had evolved their own forms of self-aware choice. Dr. Amelia Nicholson, now bearing the title of Chief Xenobiological Ambassador, stood at the central podium addressing the assembled delegates. At 72, she had lived to see humanity's greatest dream realized, not the conquest of the galaxy, but its integration. 10 years ago, she began. We thought we faced an impossible choice, destruction or coexistence. Today, we know there was a third option, transformation. Not just of our alien neighbors, but of ourselves. In the audience, Verdant shifted its now familiar form, its artistic vines creating patterns that conveyed approval and affection. The former planetary consciousness had become one of the galaxy's most respected philosophers, its insights into the nature of choice and cooperation influencing civilizations across dozens of star systems. The Astrohorror transformation proved that intelligence can evolve beyond its origins. Amelia continued. That consciousness can choose to become something greater than the sum of its parts. That cooperation between different forms of awareness isn't just possible, it's the key to unlocking the galaxy's true potential. Behind her, holographic displays showed the results of their decade-long mission. 37 worlds where monolithic intelligences had chosen transformation over isolation. 17 species that had evolved beyond their original constraints to embrace new forms of consciousness. Thousands of integrated communities where different forms of life worked together toward common goals. But perhaps most remarkably, the displays showed what had happened to humanity itself. Contact with alien forms of consciousness had pushed human awareness to new heights. Enhanced individuals with plant hybrid neural modifications. Digital consciousnesses that had learned the value of individual choice from their organic teachers. Even baseline humans had evolved new forms of empathy and understanding through their contact with truly alien minds. We stand at the threshold of a new age, Amelia concluded. An age where consciousness itself becomes the basis of civilization. Where the question is not what are you, but what do you choose to become? The assembly erupted in the various forms of applause appropriate to each species, electrical pulses, harmonic resonances, chemical releases that filled the chamber with the scent of agreement and hope. After the session, Amelia found herself in the station's observation lounge, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed distant and alien but familiar and welcoming. Each point of light represented not a destination to be conquered but a neighbor to be understood. Thinking profound thoughts? Verdant asked, settling beside her with the comfortable familiarity of old friendship. Thinking about choice, Amelia replied. About how a single decision, your decision to transform rather than fight, changed the course of galactic history. Not my decision alone, Verdant corrected. Your decision to offer transformation rather than destruction. The colonists' decision to accept coexistence rather than domination. Billions of decisions by countless beings to choose growth over stagnation. And now? Now we keep choosing. Each day, each moment, each interaction between consciousness and consciousness. The galaxy is not transformed, it is transforming. Always becoming something new, something better, something more than it was. Through the viewports, a new ship appeared, one of the biomechanical vessels that had become common in the integrated worlds, where human technology and plant consciousness worked together to create something neither could achieve alone. It was carrying the latest group of volunteers, beings ready to venture into unexplored regions of the galaxy to seek out new forms of consciousness, new opportunities for cooperation and growth. Do you ever miss it? Amelia asked. The certainty of your old existence? Verdant's features shifted into its characteristic smile. Sometimes. But then I remember that certainty is the enemy of wonder. And wonder is what makes consciousness worth having. As they watched, the biomechanical ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its crew toward new adventures, new discoveries, new possibilities for transformation and growth. Behind it, the galaxy spread out in all directions, vast, mysterious, and full of consciousness and forms they were still learning to imagine. The transformation of Astrohorror had ended the age of isolation and begun the era of integration. Now, as beings of countless different types worked together to build something unprecedented in cosmic history, they faced the future with the confidence that came from knowing that consciousness, in all its infinite varieties, would always find a way to choose growth over stagnation, cooperation over conflict, hope over fear. The galaxy was vast, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with minds that had learned to value choice, to celebrate diversity, and to build bridges between different forms of awareness. And in that transformation, Both humanity and its alien neighbors had found something precious, not just survival, but meaning. The age of choice had begun, and the possibilities were infinite.